Because Good morning. It is an honor to warm up the pulpit on this first Sunday of the year. I'll warm you as much as I can. May I speak words that you need to hear, and may you listen in my pauses to the sermon of your own heart. I want to open with a quotation from a 1942 text by German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, which he called New Year's Reckoning. After it was written, he gave copies to 3 of his friends and hid one copy under the roof beams of his parents' house. 4 months later, he was arrested by the Gestapo for his decade of public and clandestine opposition to the Third Reich, and imprisoned in Berlin for 2 years until his part in a failed plot to assassinate Hitler came to light, and he was executed by hanging in April 1945 at the age of 39, 1 month before Germany surrendered to the Allies. In a section of this New Year's letter that he called No Ground Under Our Feet, Bonhoeffer wrote, "One may ask whether there have ever before in human history been people with so little ground under their feet. People to whom every available alternative seemed equally intolerable, repugnant, and futile. Or perhaps one should rather ask whether the responsible thinking people of any generation that stood at a turning point in history did not feel much as we do, simply because something new was emerging that could not be seen in the existing alternatives." Reading Bonhoeffer's letters and papers from prison is encouraging to me, partly because he was my age when he wrote them, and I resonate with this sense of no ground under our feet. Intolerable, repugnant, futile. Bonhoeffer's words easily apply to images from our moment, to outrages I witness daily in this city where I live, in this country where the habits of fascism are becoming ever more brash, in the globalized human behaviors of extraction, exploitation, and murder. And I share his inquiry, his hope really, about whether this feeling of no ground is at least partly because we are mid-leap, at a turning point of history ourselves, participants in the emergence of something new. So this morning, here at the outset of 2025, I invite us to explore this sensation of no ground, of free fall between paradigms, which, following the mystics of several traditions, I will call the state of unknowing. Unknowing is a state we can practice, a stance we can inhabit in our days. And, importantly, I think unknowing is a precondition for epiphany, the bright appearance of a truth which impels us to action. I bring up Epiphany only partly because tomorrow is, in some Western Christianities, celebrated as the holiday by that name, said to be the day the wise men completed their journey to Bethlehem and made offerings to the newborn there, whom they understood to be a fulfillment of Hebrew prophecy. Though that story only appears in the Gospel of Matthew and comprises a mere 10 verses, the journey of the wise men, or as my study Bible clunkily calls them, the literate political officials in the courts of Parthia, Armenia, and East Judea, has been amplified in popular accounts of the Christmas story, or at the very least in my childhood imagination of it. My sister and I inherited very little of our parents' Christian upbringings, but we did inherit a wooden creche with the nativity characters, a dollhouse, for all intents and purposes, made special by the fact that we only got to play with it 1 month per year. The entire drama of which, as I recall, centered around the progress of the kings around the living room of our apartment, over couch cushions, under the rug, between record albums, over bookshelves, through the murky waters of the Christmas tree bucket, until they arrived, sodden and scratched on Christmas Day, to join the donkey, pig, shepherd, baby, mommy, etc., in the rickety wooden stable on our windowsill. This game, along with my early passion for the plodding, ominous, astrological headbanger We Three Kings, star of beauty, star of light, star of royal beauties bright, fixed the Magi, in my mind, as central to the story of Christmas, rather than the brief structural blip they are in the Bible itself. I will come back to the wise men and what they offer, but I'm inclined first to look more closely at the word epiphany itself, what it means, and what we already know about it just from living our lives. The Greek prefix epi means near, upon, close by. Other words with this prefix include epicenter, near or at the center, as of a storm. Epidemic, a blight that is upon the people, demos. Epitaph, the words right there on the gravestone. And epidermis, the on of our outermost skin. Epi begins words of intimacy, nearness, touch. Phanein means to manifest or appear, to shine brightly, to come suddenly into view. So together, epiphanein means something that appears suddenly quite close, a bright manifestation nearby. The star which inspired the journey of the Magi in the Gospel of Matthew is in some ways a very literal epiphany, a nearby bright star. In our everyday use of the word, epiphany extends to any sudden knowing, any bright truth. And I want to pause here and invite each of you to remember one sudden near truth you've had in your life, which interrupted how things were, and which, once seen, you had no choice but to take the journey of. It may have been an exciting and joyful epiphany, or a terrifying and sad one, or both. So go ahead and choose just one. And take a breath with this memory. Make vivid that moment of recognition, the moment you suddenly knew something new. And now call to mind how you felt in the days or weeks preceding that knowledge. Maybe there was a building sense of pressure, discomfort, restlessness, tension, confusion. There's a word that I love for the restlessness that migrating birds feel before they begin their migration. It's the word Zugenruhe. And I think sometimes before we know something, there's a certain restlessness. We call it confusion. And now take a moment to remember how it felt in your body to make that decision, to acknowledge the truth that had been burgeoning, and to act on it. Is there anything you appreciate about the Epiphany? Anything you learned about yourself, especially your relationship to the unknown? If we had all day, it'd be fun to tell stories. But I invite you to come back from that memory whenever you're ready. In my preparations for this sermon, I thought of several moments in my own life I would call epiphanies, including the day I realized I would apply to seminary, and also the day I helped my dad die. Reflecting on these moments, I noticed they all share not only the sudden appearance of a new truth, but also that potent state which directly preceded the epiphany, a state in which I gave up what I thought I already knew about the situation, asked a different question, and opened to the unknown of it. And there's always some grief when we agree to be remade, especially when it's not really a choice, just a giving in to the forces of change. Once I was obedient. Then I knew I had to break a rule. Once I was well-liked. Then I stood unpopular. Once I was reliable. Then I was a huge disappointment. Once I was safe. Then I chose danger. Once I was in danger and I said no more. Once I was jaded about love. Then I said yes. Once I was enjoying something and it ended anyway. Once my father's hand was warm. Then he was a handful of ash. How do we soften to this? How do we greet what we can't yet see? Soften bodily, I mean. I call unknowing a stance, and I mean a stance of the body. Like when you get onto a packed subway and you can't reach the railing. But the doors slide shut and something changes in your pelvis. Your feet wake up, your knees bend a little. The train lurches forward and some ancient intelligence in you counter-lurches. We careen side to side. We don't know what's coming up the tunnel, but we can ride. Which is what's being asked of us in 2025, while the brittle, all-knowing institutions around us shudder under the gathering winds. Corporations know. The law knows. Courts and prisons know. Advertisers know. Whiteness knows. Academia knows. Autocrats know. Churches know. Nations know. People, though. Pregnant people unknow. Kids unknow. Queers unknow. Forests unknow. Survivors unknow. Students unknow. Rivers unknow. Rebels unknow. Lovers unknow and unknow and unknow. And saxophone and poets unknow. A poem, actually, is practice for unknowing, a language that unknows itself on purpose. If God talks, it's in poems. Lines break and the star shines through. This is the oppressor's language, wrote Adrienne Rich, yet I need it to talk to you. By 1938, all German pastors were ordered to take an oath of loyalty to Hitler. Kristallnacht was later that year. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was well known in his opposition to National Socialism, and he was secretly part of the German resistance. So in 1939, his friends encouraged him to board a ship to New York to wait out the war in safety, which he did. But no sooner had he landed than he realized, in what was surely some kind of epiphany, that he had to return immediately to Germany. I've made a mistake in coming to Europe," he wrote. "I will have no right to participate in the reconstruction of Christian life in Germany after the war if I do not share the trials of this time with my people." And so he boarded what was to be the last ship back to Europe from New York before war broke out. And participate he has through his writings, his sermons, and through the example of his bold life. Not everyone's epiphany is martyrdom, but everyone is given opportunities to be brave in the course of being human, to be spontaneously more brave than before, more human. So this is my New Year's invitation to us all, a collective stance of unknowing and openness to epiphany. My favorite thing about the wise men is that they brought gifts. Gold, which is gold and needs no further explanation. Frankincense, the milk of a certain desert shrub, fragrant, used in cosmetics and for burning, and as a medicine for ailments ranging from bronchitis to syphilis to rheumatism. A gift, writes herbalist James Duke in his book, Herbs of the Bible, that indicates the holiness and divinity of the recipient. And myrrh, also a resin, which exudes as tears or pearls from the plant, is used in embalming and as a salve for the dead. Also a good mouthwash, a tea for diarrhea, tapeworm, and insanity. Myrrh, writes Duke, symbolizes the hardship and suffering that Jesus is to face as an adult. It was also brought, according to the Bible, to his tomb on the other end of his life. These offerings, expensive and precious in their time, indicate a wholehearted readiness on the part of their bearers to greet the new paradigm that awaits them in the manger. I aspire to carry my most precious gifts into the unknown of the coming year, too. And personally, I find the teachings of contemplative traditions most supportive in that intention. This morning, we did a brief equanimity practice from the Theravadan Buddhist teachings of the Four Boundless States. We heard a reading from the Cloud of Unknowing, and contemporary Christian teachers, Father Thomas Keating and Cynthia Bourgeot, both have written beautiful instructions for centering prayer, which is another contemplative practice that I find helpful when it comes to unknowing. All of the Dharma teachers I've encountered encourage us to practice being with the truth of change in a present and courageous way. And life serves us endless informal opportunities to open to the unknown, like putting a crying baby in our arms, or a stranger who wants to talk to us on our path. We can ask a heart question and flip to a random page in a book for the answer, or walk outside without a destination. We can ask a wise friend for advice and actually follow it. These gestures of openness are frankincense and myrrh on the altar of the unknown. This heart of equanimity is gold. I close with a koan from the Book of Serenity, a collection of cases which Zen Buddhist teachers have long offered their students to help them wake up. In this one, case number 20, the teacher Dizong asked another young monk, Fayan, "Where are you going?" Fayan said, "Around on a pilgrimage." Dizong said, "What is the purpose of pilgrimage?" Fayan said, "I don't know." Dizong said, "Not knowing is nearest. May your not knowing bring you nearer to your highest truth, and may you have good company in your courage living it.